presenting his book, Het Sein Staat op Road. Yeah, this is the book.
Yes.
We really appreciate him taking the time to share his knowledge and experience with us. I would like also to thank Pak Hermanto and Pak Prayudi for helping organize this event and joint activity between MASKA, ITF, PII. PII is Association of Indonesian Engineer, and also to be our book commentary today. I see some audience also come from member from Perpenka. Perpenka is the Association of Retired Indonesian Railway Professionals, which celebrates its 59th anniversary just about a week ago. Even though they are officially off duty, they are still active contributing to the development of railways in Indonesia. That's something we really appreciate. It is also similar to Pak Wim, who remains active in the railway world, especially through his writing this book, so we can all continue learning from his experiences. Just a quick note, the date of 6 April was chosen because it is historically important for the Indonesian railway. On this day, 6 April 1875, the state railway in the Dutch East Indies, now Indonesia, was established. And that company, the Staatspoorwegen, still exists until now. Now is the PTKAI of Indonesian State Railway. That's a short history. And before we start, let me briefly introduce Dr. Insinyur Wim Beukenkamp. He was born in Rotterdam, the Netherlands, in 1956. He studied engineering at the Delft University of Technology. I was also one of the alumni and completed his PhD in risk management of transportation system in 2016. He worked as a senior railway inspector and accident investigator and at the Dutch Railway Inspectorate under the Ministry of Transport, Inspection, Environment and Transport from 2007 to 2022. He's now retired, but only retired from the ministry, but he has a big passion for railways. Besides writing books about the railway, he's also working on building a replica of a famous blue tram in his museum in Haarlem. So if member of MASKA came again to the Netherlands, you can see in the museum of Pak Wim the blue tram, the famous blue tram, still going to be finished. So there is a short introduction. After this brief introduction, the program will begin with the book presentation by Dr. Insinyur Wim Beukenkamp, and this will be followed by comments from Pak Hermanto and Pak Prayudi. Then we will open the floor for question and discussion from the audience. Okay, Pak Wim, now the time is yours. You can begin the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Wid. Good afternoon, selamat sore to all of you. As Wid said, I am still active in the field of railways and tramways. And before I start my presentation, I can also announce that I'm going to start to write a book on the trams of Jakarta and Surabaya, which is a very interesting subject about which very little has ever been published. So I think that there will be interest also from Indonesia. We keep you informed. Now, about my book. I once said that the book I wrote is also my testament to nearly 20 years as railway inspector. And it is a follow-up to an earlier book, which was published many years ago, and it was written by Mr. Jongerius, and he described all the accidents on the Dutch railway system from its beginning in 1839 till 1992. Since 1992, a lot has happened. Yes, the Dutch railway system is safe, but it's not immune to serious accidents. And you can see that in the book that I wrote. I have deliberately chosen to create chapters about specific types of accidents. The book is published by the ALK in Alkmaar. It can be ordered through them. Unfortunately, it's only in Dutch. But I think, well, first of all, we have now very good translation programs. And I will also send Pakwit my presentation so he can share it with you. And that helps understanding the book. Now, the contents. First of all, I started to describe signaling and train protection on the Dutch railway system, because a lot of people think they know how it works, and in reality, they don't know the details. For example, in 1945, most of the whole Dutch infrastructure was completely destroyed through war actions. So actually, our railway system needed to be rebuilt, and it was mostly rebuilt using American technology supplied to the Netherlands through the Marshall Aid. And you can still recognize that. Now, I explained that in chapter 1. An example of this American influence is that we have some very strange speed limits in the Netherlands. Our speed limits are 40 kilometers an hour, 80 kilometers an hour, 130 kilometers an hour. This looks strange until you translate them into...
jadi Belanda, Wim Beukenkamp.
Iya, Belanda.
Until you translate them into American units. 40 kilometers an hour is 25 miles per hour, 80 kilometers an hour is 50 miles per hour, and 130 kilometers per hour is 80 miles per hour, and then it makes sense. Also, our train protection system is 100% American, and I explained that in chapter 1. In chapter 2, I explain how our railway system has evolved since 1993. In 1993, we had only one railway company, which was NS, Nederlandse Spoorwegen. Under political influence, NS was split, and now we have almost organizational chaos on the Dutch railway system, where we have an infrastructure manager, ProRail, working directly under the Ministry of Transport, and we have several railway companies, of which Nederlandse Spoorwegen passenger operation is still one. It doesn't make it easy. I have been involved in an accident in which no less than 6 parties were involved. And they all brought their lawyers with them when I published my report. Chapter 3 starts with serious accidents on level crossings. We still have about 3,000 level crossings in the Netherlands, and they are a real hazard, as I think they are also on Java. Chapter 4, despite our modern train protection system, we still had train collisions. I explain how these train collisions could happen. Chapter 5 deals with derailments. Some of them are caused by defects in the permanent way or problems with the maintenance of the permanent way. Another serious problem, which was fortunately solved, is buffer stop collisions. We had some quite remarkable buffer stop collisions where trains went through a buffer stop. The most famous one was in 2003 in The Hague Central Station, where an NS train ended up in the magazine of a local chocolate shop. And the poor lady serving the chocolate shop had to explain to her manager, who was actually in Belgium because it was a Belgian firm, that she had to close down the shop because there was a very large yellow chocolate bonbon in her store. And this poor Belgian guy didn't understand what the problem was. Chapter 7 deals with problems in the infrastructure, which are mainly design problems. And Chapter 8 deals with where are we now, railway safety in 2025. And then there is a postscript which was written actually written by my promoter, Professor John Stope. What can we learn from these incidents, and an afterthought? Okay, the block system. The block system in the Netherlands is basically the same as in Indonesia, on Java. We use a triple aspect signal, red, yellow, and green. And this triple aspect signal tells the driver something about the next 2 blocks. Green means the next 2 blocks are free. In other words, he can drive on with the allowed line speed. Yellow means the next block is free. However, the following block can be occupied, so you must be prepared for a red signal, a signal at danger at the end of it. And the red, of course, means the next block is occupied, or there is no route set, and you need to stop before the signal. Train detection in the Netherlands. We use the American system for most of our railway system. We use the American system supplied by the General Railway Signaling Company. We use continuous detection through track circuits. Continuous detection has the advantage that if you have a power failure, and after, say, half an hour, the power comes back on, you can immediately see which trains are where. When you have a point detection system, using pedals or axle counters, you can't see the trains until they pass the point detection. The disadvantage is that these track circuits, they can malfunction through interference. Well, this is the block system as you will recognize it. This train has just passed the signal, so this signal shows a red aspect. The previous one is yellow and this one is green. And because there is only one free block between this train and that train, this signal shows a yellow aspect. In other words, this train can move on, but only at limited speed. Train protection. We use ATB, which is actually developed in America by the General Railway Signaling Company in 1932. So it's a very old relay-based system. It is used, amongst others, on the Long Island Railroad around New York. It's also used by the underground system of New York and Boston and some other railways. Through the Marshall Aid, it came to the Netherlands. It was further developed in the Netherlands by a consortium of the General Railway Signaling Company and Philips, and they founded the NV Spoorwegsein-industrie, which is nowadays part of Alstom in France. From 1972 on, step by step, it was introduced on the Dutch railways. And it took so long because NS decided that they wanted to introduce ATB together with a modernization of signaling, replacing the mechanical signaling with modern electronic signals. But it was still based on relay technique using pulse generators. The communication of this train protection system was actually via the track circuits. So it was superimposed on the track circuit signal. The pulse frequency is the same as the ATB code. And the implementation took nearly a quarter of a century. It was finally complete in 1996 when all the major railway lines in the Netherlands were equipped with ATB. This is a scheme of how ATB works. These are the codes, pulses per minute. ATB code 270 is not used in the Netherlands, unfortunately. You see 40 kilometers an hour, 40 kilometers an hour. The difference between these two is that ATB code 270 is 40 kilometers an hour with an obligation to start braking the train. Whereas if you have no code, you can happily drive on with 40 kilometers an hour without any brake application. 270 is used in the United States, especially with the underground systems, but NS decided not to use it, and there were several reasons to do it, which are actually beyond this presentation. Code 220 means 60 kilometers an hour. Code 180 is 80 kilometers an hour. Code 120 is 130 kilometers an hour. And later they introduced code 96, which is 140 kilometers an hour and faster. And that was specially introduced for the high-speed trains running from Paris to Amsterdam when they had to use the conventional railway system between Rotterdam and Amsterdam. And code 75 is a signal that ATB is not in use. So it switches off the ATB system on board. It is no longer used in the Netherlands. Problems. Sometimes we have an oscillating signal due to the disruption of the track circuit. So, for example, at one time you have a track circuit with a fully functional signal, and it shows code 96, meaning you can drive 140 kilometers an hour, and the next moment the track signal disappears, meaning that the ATB code is none, and that is maximum speed is only 40 kilometers an hour. It's also sensitive to disturbance by modern traction equipment. Well, as you know, modern electric rolling stock, even when operating under the 1500 volt DC, as they use in the Netherlands, but also on Java, modern traction equipment uses three-phase drive powered by inverters. And these inverters create huge disturbance problems. So you need a lot of electronic damping of this disturbance. Another thing is ATB is relay technique. So it only checks whether you apply the brake, but it doesn't check whether the brake application is effective. This resulted in the development of ATB VV, verbeterde versie, improved version. It was gradually implemented on vulnerable signals. At present, about 1,300 signals have been equipped with ATB VV, mainly around the major railway stations such as Amsterdam Central, Utrecht Central, Rotterdam, and so on. ATB VV uses separate beacons to supervise the braking curves. And if a train moves too fast over these beacons, ATB VV enforces an emergency stop. ATB VV is effective until up to 40 kilometers an hour. When a train is moving faster, it won't stop the train before the signal, but it will stop the train before it reaches the point of danger. In 1996, we were left with a couple of secondary non-electrified railway lines, especially in the northeast of the Netherlands, Friesland and Groningen. And these railway lines, they needed to be operated as cheaply as possible. So they developed a new version of ATB. They called it New Generation. Basically, it has almost nothing to do with traditional ATB. It is more like the German Induzie PZB, and it works on point detection. It was very successful. It was implemented from 1993 on. The main advantage of NG is that NG has a supervision of braking curves, again through balises and axle counters. And it was so successful that Dutch Railways was about to introduce it on the rest of the railway system. However, right at that point, in 2005, the European Union, the European Commission in Brussels interfered because they had started developing the European Rail Traffic Management System, ERTMS, and everybody expected that ERTMS would be operational within 5 to 10 years. the reality was quite different. But it meant that Brussels didn't allow further development of any national train protection system in the run-up to the introduction of ERTMS. So we had to stop with implementing ATB and G, which was very unfortunate. ERTMS, European Rail Traffic Management System, it is now actually the standard of a European train protection system, and I believe it has also been exported to countries outside Europe. I don't know whether they use ERTMS on Java, but I think sooner or later you might start using it. I know they are using it in China, for example. It is an interoperable European system for signals and train protection. The software actually is open source, meaning that you can have track equipment from Bombardier and train equipment from Siemens, and they can happily communicate with each other. The train receives a movement authority for a specific distance through track balises, let's say small radio stations. The communication uses a very specific frequency band, which is called GSM R for railways. The onboard equipment translates the movement authority in a maximum speed and a remaining distance. So actually, instead of looking 2 blocks ahead, in some cases, the driver can be looking 40 kilometers ahead. There's also a supervision of the braking curve, because the onboard equipment continuously calculates the maximum permitted speed and the remaining distance till the end of the movement authority. This calculation is also based on the condition of the train. It does make a difference whether you have a very light 2-coach passenger train or a 5,000-ton ore train from Rotterdam to the German Ruhr area. And as you understand, this 5,000-ton train is a dinosaur. It takes ages to speed up, and it takes kilometers to slow it down. ERTMS has now been implemented in the Netherlands on the Bedah route, which is a dedicated freight railway from the port of Rotterdam to Germany. It has also been introduced on the high-speed railway from Amsterdam via Rotterdam to Antwerp. It has been introduced as an overlay on the existing Amsterdam to Utrecht railway, which is quite funny because the train driver in Amsterdam, for example, has the option of either driving to Utrecht on ATB, which limits his speed to 140 kilometers, or using ERTMS, and then he is allowed to drive to Utrecht at a speed of 200 kilometers an hour. It has also been introduced on the new railway from Lelystad to Zwolle. The project for further implementation is ongoing, but it will take quite a lot of years before it will be completed. It is now estimated that the completion will be finished around 2050. To compare that, we always mock the Belgians. The Belgian jokes are famous in the Netherlands. By the way, the Belgians have also some very nasty jokes about the Dutch. But one way or another, Belgium has already fully converted to ERTMS. Chapter 3, serious accidents on level crossings. Why have we so many level crossings in the Netherlands? Well, simply because the Netherlands is almost as flat as a pancake. So most crossings are on the level, and that is why we still have about 3,000 of them. And it is quite expensive of building tunnels for the roads underneath the railway. Each upgrade, each road tunnel under a rail system will cost you at least 10 million euros. And as I said, we have 3,000 of them, so that is a huge sum. However, there is an ongoing project to replace as many level crossings as possible. The tempo is unfortunately slow. We only do about 50 each year. So this means that it will take at least 60 to 80 years before they've all been replaced. I start with a serious accident in Zaandam, where a double-deck train was struck by a passenger car. The double-deck train got derailed. One of the passengers on board the double-deck train didn't survive. 32, including the driver of the car, were injured. To add insult to injury, this double-deck train derailed and it ended right on top of a major gas pipeline. And that hampered the recovery of the train. Forced 2,005 passengers killed. Apeldoorn in 2000, a very sad accident. It was Jeroen Schut was a 12-year-old schoolboy riding on his bike, and he was struck by a train, not because he was at fault. The road situation was not designed in a proper way. And I mentioned this accident because at first the police told the parents of Jeroen Schut that Jeroen committed suicide, which is of course very sad news. And later investigation showed that Jeroen didn't commit suicide. He was struck by a train completely beyond his fault. And it shows how important it is to do a proper accident investigation and don't always trust the police. Veenendaal, which is an example of what can happen during maintenance. Maintenance staff were working on the level crossing. In order to work on the level crossing, they shorted some safety relays, but they forgot to mention this to the train dispatcher. The train dispatcher, the train dienstleider, should have informed the train drivers to pass this level crossing at low speed, maximum 10 kilometers an hour. Because he didn't do that, the trains were actually crossing there at 140 kilometers an hour, resulting in the fact that the level crossing was not closed when this intercity train approached, and a car was struck by a train. Assen was also remarkable. The driver of a Dutch army tank thought that his tank was invulnerable. He didn't survive a collision with an intercity train. Weije was an example of how important it is at the time that Dutch rolling stock was still very heavily constructed. an intercity struck a very heavy lorry at a speed of 130 kilometers an hour. The driver of the lorry was killed, but the train driver survived. Halfweg 2009, I was involved with the accident investigation. In the middle of the night, a train drove through an articulated bus. The train driver thought that he had actually killed about 60 people, but fortunately the articulated bus was empty. It was about to pick up passengers, but it was empty. So the only one in the bus was the bus driver, and the bus driver came out of the wreckage without any injuries. The only problem was he was found still seated in his seat, but there was no bus behind him. Dalfsen 2016 was a sad example. A very slow vehicle was actually crossing the railway. The level crossing signaling was designed for motor traffic driving at least 15 kilometers an hour, but this very slow farmer works vehicle could only drive 3 kilometers an hour, so he took ages to clear the level crossing, and he was struck by a train. The driver of the farmer car survived, but the train driver didn't. In fact, his train was designed under new European rules, and the cap of the train was completely sheared off. And this is the first time I've seen something happening like that. Same year and the following year, we had some very nasty accidents in the north. And then in Os 2018, we had a very sad accident with a stint. A stint is a sort of motorized Bedah used for transportation of children to and from a school. And there were, at the time of the accident, there were about 6 children in the stint, but there was a design error in the stint. It wasn't fail-safe. So suddenly the stint started accelerating, and it went through the gates of the level crossing, and it was struck by a train, and 4 children didn't survive. Hooghalen 2020, train driver didn't survive. And then quite recently in 2023, at Voorschoten between Leiden and The Hague, we had a multiple collision at a level crossing, and it resulted in 1 dead and 31 injured. And like Zaandam, the train derailed, and this time it ended up on a major freshwater supply line from The Hague to Leiden. What are the recurring problems with level crossings? Well, first of all, the traffic situation is not always clear to the cars and bikes using the level crossing. Industrial level crossings are extra vulnerable, especially since in the Netherlands we have lorries coming from all over Europe, and they don't always know the local situation. In fact, we had one accident where the lorry driver thought that this railway was a branch railway only used for the occasional freight train, whereas in reality it was a fully operational passenger railway with a quite frequent railway service. So this lorry driver actually parked his lorry right in the middle of the level crossing. In urban areas, you can have a complex traffic system with congestion. You can have a row of cars actually extending on and over the level crossing. And I think you can also witness that on Java. Manifestations are a problem. There are a lot of people wanting to go to the festival, but also at the end of the festival, everybody leaves at the same time. And that can again lead to congestion. And then we still have non-protected crossings in the Netherlands. It's quite unbelievable that in this time of the this day of age, 2026, we still have these primitive crossings, but we still have them, and they are a huge risk. I mention the crossing where special slow vehicles use the level crossing. You have to take that into account, especially, for example, when it is a level crossing leading to a farm or an industry. And as we've seen, Zaandam, Voorschoten, there is the risk of escalation beyond the railway system. Another subject is train collisions and other incidents. Dordrecht was a bad one. Roermond was a bad one. The driver didn't survive. However, we suspect that actually the train driver of one of the trains died before the accident. He died because of a heart attack. Amsterdam Central, we had several incidents in a short time. This one in 2004 was serious because at first there was a very badly injured passenger, but she was not initially found by the fire brigade. It took about 3 hours before somebody realized that there was still a casualty in the front coach. And if it had taken 1 hour longer, she wouldn't have survived this accident. A somewhat funny one was a fire in a train near Zwolle. A passenger detected that there was a fire in the motor car, so he applied the emergency brake, and the train came to a full stop right on top of the IJssel bridge. And the IJssel is one of the major rivers in the Netherlands. So there was a huge amount of water. The problem was that the fire brigade couldn't reach the train. And it took about 2 hours to build a special pipeline for pumping water before they could start to extinguish the fire. And by that time, the power car had burned out. It resulted into a serious question what to do with emergency brake systems, because sometimes an emergency brake can result in a train stopping exactly where you don't want it to stop. For example, if you have a train on fire, the last place you want it to stop is in a tunnel. So when the high-speed railway was opened, the first thing we did was that we made the emergency brake handle as optional. It didn't immediately generate an emergency brake actuation, but it generated a signal to the train driver that there was a serious problem and he needed to stop the train as soon as possible at a convenient location. And that was quite a change, because for a century, well, almost 2 centuries, an emergency brake application was instantaneously. Arnhem was an example of a train driver thinking he knew the route, although he'd never been there, and he misread the signals at Arnhem Station, and he thought that the green signal was for him, whereas it was actually for a train next to him, and there was a collision resulting from that. Amsterdam Muidenpoort, two trains in a collision, a sideways collision. They were on parallel tracks, and then at the end they came together, and one of the drivers missed the red signal. We had a near collision at Haarlem, which was almost a repetition of Amsterdam Muidenpoort. Weesp, again, a repetition of Amsterdam Muidenpoort. Gouda, a beautiful one. There was a steam train, an excursion steam train approaching Gouda from the direction of Utrecht. And right at that moment, there was a Dutch intercity standing at the platform in Gouda, and there was a diverted Thalys, a high-speed train from Paris, which was actually passing Gouda. Now, both drivers of the Thalys and the Dutch intercity were quite surprised that they were approached by a steam train, so they didn't pay attention to the signal. The signal showed green for the Thalys, but it showed red for the Dutch intercity, and nevertheless, the intercity departed, and it came into sideways collision with the Thalys, and it is one of the few examples where a picture was taken from the steam train right at the moment of the collision. Barendrecht 2009 was a very bad accident. Two freight trains in a head-on collision, and to make it worse, it happened under the viaduct of the A15 motorway and over the divider of the high-speed railway. I mean, you can't think of such an accident. There was a near collision at Capelle Bieselingen, mainly caused by a complete miscommunication between two train drivers and the train dispatcher, and it resulted in a new way of communication based on air traffic standards. Maasvlakte, again, two freight trains in a head-on collision. Amsterdam Singelgracht, that was a very serious, very nasty accident, 2012. I was there, I was the first railway inspector there, and it was an incredible situation. A sprinter, a stopping train, collided head-on with an approaching intercity train. Surprisingly, the train driver survived, but one of the passengers in the intercity got killed, and over 200 were injured. You can't imagine the damage and the whole situation when you arrive there. Only a week later, there was a near collision at Utrecht, which was almost a repetition of Amsterdam. We had Tilburg, where a route was set for a passenger train, but it was a sort of entrapment situation. The train driver expected a free run. In reality, he was being led into the rear of a freight train with dangerous goods. And then, quite recently, we had a near collision at Leiden. Again, a train driver misreading several signals. I think this applies to almost every railway system in the world. Passing a signal at danger, which is in the English literature called a SPAD, a signal passed at danger. That is always a very, very dangerous situation. It is caused sometimes by a departure from a railway platform on a yellow aspect, meaning you've only got one block free, where the train driver actually expects a free route to the next station. So he doesn't pay attention to the signals. And the problem in the Netherlands is that ATB doesn't interfere with a train as long as it doesn't exceed the speed limit of 40 kilometers an hour. And this is one of the causes of the Amsterdam 2012 accident. We've also seen examples where the train staff, the head of the train, the conductor, actually knew that there was a dangerous situation. He knew that the signals were showing red. He knew that apparently the driver was not observing the signals, and yet he or she didn't apply the emergency brake handle. So this conductor could have actually prevented the accident. And that caused me to ask the question, well, if a train conductor, a trained railway staff, if he doesn't use the emergency brake handle, why do we still have them on board? And that was a good question, and I'm still waiting for the answer. We've also seen problems with the dead man protection. In the old days, the train driver had to press down the dead man handle or pedal continuously. But when you have to do that for 2 hours, your leg starts sleeping. So in the Netherlands, we changed to the intermitting dead man application, meaning that once a minute, you have to press down the dead man handle and then release it to tell the system that you are still alive. However, if you develop a serious health problem like a heart attack in that minute, the train can actually travel unprotected for quite some distance. We have many examples of vulnerable route setting, entrapment, where the train driver expects a free route, and in reality, his route is only set for 1 or 2 blocks, and then he needs to stop. And unlike some other railway systems, for example, the British railway system, we don't have an active SPAD detection and warning. For example, in Great Britain, vulnerable signals, they have a SPAD signal, which is 300 meters beyond the signal. And if a train passes a signal at danger, the SPAD signal, which is actually a light signal using 3 red lights, it starts flashing. And it is an intermittent flashing, so it really attracts the attention of the train driver. There is also a warning to the train dispatcher that there is a train who was involved in a SPAD, so he can shut down all other train movements. But we don't have that in the Netherlands. Chapter 5 deals with derailments. Derailments caused by problems in the train itself, not track problems. They will come later. In Apeldoorn, we had an error in the loading of a steel train. As some of you know, we still have a major steel industry, Hoogovens, west of Amsterdam, and they ship out a number of steel trains each day with coils. And one of these trains, the coils were not properly loaded and fastened, so they started moving sideways, and that caused an unbalance. And when the train approached Apeldoorn over a quite normal zigzag point work, the train capsized. Amsterdam Central, we had a derailment through a loose wheel tire. The traditional railway wheel still uses separate tires which are shrunk onto the wheel. They can also work loose. And we had when that major damage was repaired, they needed to short points, and they forgot to remove these bridges, resulting in another derailment. The same year, we had a derailment with a push-pull train, where the loco was actually pushing the train over zigzag tracks, and like it sometimes happens on your model railway, it actually pushed the train off the track. Amsterdam-Muiden Poort was a very serious one. It was a hot box in a big freight train, and it created a huge amount of damage. 4 out of 6 tracks were completely destroyed. We have some others, and the last one was quite a remarkable one. We have a lot of canals and rivers in the Netherlands, and most railways, when they cross these canals and rivers, they have lifting bridges. The approach to these lifting bridges is safeguarded by approaching relay, meaning that if a train is within braking distance of the bridge, the approach relay is activated and the bridge can't be operated. Now, again, in the previous weekend, there was maintenance work around this bridge, not in the bridge itself, but around it. So there was a lot of track vehicles going up and down the track, and they created false signals. So what they did was they shorted the approach relays. However, they forgot to mention this to the maintenance staff actually opening opening the railway again following the maintenance works on the Monday morning. So they didn't remove these shorts, and trains started operating over this bridge until around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, when a ship approached and the bridge needed to be opened. So the train dispatcher looked at his on his display, and he saw that the approaching relays were showing green, meaning there is no train approaching the bridge. So he handed the operation of the bridge over to the bridge operator, which was fortunately sitting next to him. The bridge operator was about to open the bridge, but he looked on his video display, and to his astonishment, he noticed an intercity train approaching the bridge at 130 kilometers an hour. So he decided not to open the bridge. Of course, he sounded the alarm. The train passed the bridge without any problem. In fact, the train driver had no idea of the disaster that nearly happened. And then for the rest of the day, the railway that was shut down to sort out the problem. And this also shows how important it is that everybody involved with the railway system is really paying attention also to safety. Multiple problems. The biggest problem in the Netherlands is maintenance and inspection of freight stock. The port of Rotterdam is one of the largest ports still in the world. It is certainly the largest port in Europe. The result is that we have many freight trains going to and from Rotterdam, and they can come from as far as Romania, even Turkey, Poland, you name it. They are all maintained in Romania, in Bulgaria, and the only thing you can hope is that they are maintained to a proper standard. However, these freight cars, sometimes they travel all over Europe for about a year before they return to their home depot. And a lot can happen in a year. The other problem is exceeding of maximum speed. It is for a good reason that some freight trains have a limited maximum speed, simply because the air brake system takes time to slow down a train. And what I said, we have these 5,000-ton ore trains, which are almost American style, but they really take this a brake distance of sometimes up to 4 or 5 kilometers an hour to bring them to a full stop when they are traveling at 100 kilometers an hour, which is the normal speed of this train. Shorting of safety relays, we've seen that at level crossings, we've seen that time and again. It is really a safety critical issue, and if you are still using relays on your railway system, you need very, very strict procedures when it is necessary to bridge such a relay, and it must be properly documented, including a document at the train dispatches saying that this and that relay is no longer functioning. What I advocated, because I come from the steel industry, from Hoogovens, and at Hoogovens we have banned safety relay. We are using work switches, which can be made self-signaling. So if you activate the switch, the operator knows that the switch has been operated. He can see that. Whereas if you have a safety relay and it is bridged, nobody can see it. The other thing is that, train drivers, they must learn how to drive a train. And they first start their teaching in special schools, nowadays using computer simulations, but sooner or later they have to come on board and they have to drive a train. They must learn how to drive this train, but they must also learn how to drive on a specific route. And that learning is done under the supervision of an experienced train driver. It is the same as learning how to drive a motor car. You have a teacher next to you. Never mind how many lessons you had, you are still a trainee, meaning you can make errors. In fact, it is from errors that you learn. We had examples of trainee supervisors who were actually reading newspapers when their trainee train driver was driving the train, and that is not what you want. Buffer stop collisions, well, they can happen all over the world. There is the very famous picture of Gare Montparnasse in Paris, 1896, where an express train went through a buffer stop and ended in the street below. But we also had them in the Netherlands. In fact, my grandfather was a train driver, and he was involved in such an accident in Zandvoort in 1929. The main problem with buffer stops is that we found that there were several problems. First of all, it is very difficult to estimate the remaining distance to a buffer stop. What we also noticed was that the approaching speed was in many ways sometimes too high. Although 40 kilometers an hour is allowed in station areas, it still means that a train needs about 200 meters to come to a full stop. And sometimes you don't have that distance. We had examples of sliding trains through locked wheels. Modern trains have disc brakes instead of the traditional wheel brake. The wheel brake has the advantage that the brake block actually cleans the wheel, whereas a disc brake doesn't clean the wheel. And for example, when you have leaves coming down in the autumn, and that's a problem you don't have on Java, but we do have it in the Netherlands, it can create a layer of mud on the wheel surface, and it acts as oil. What we also had in the Netherlands, we still have them. We have buffer stops, which are not compatible with the rolling stock. These buffer stops are designed for side buffers, whereas most railway stock in the Netherlands is equipped with automatic couplings. Another problem was that the buffer stop was not strong enough. It was a buffer stop in name only, but trains smashed through them, and the buffer stop was a fixed object. It was a non-elastic collision. For a long time, the railway engineers at ProRail, the Dutch infra manager, they said, well, these problems can't be solved. And I said, well, I prove you otherwise. So I designed a buffer stop which actually solved these problems. I designed a buffer stop which was actually no longer fixed. It was sliding, but it was sliding using brake pads, resulting in a progressive brake application. This buffer stop could actually stop a train 400 tons at a maximum of 15 kilometers an hour, using a braking distance of 10 meters. And that was designed in such a way that a standing passenger would not tumble over. We've also improved the visibility and the estimation of the remaining distance. Instead of a single end signal on the buffer stop, we've replaced that with double signals. And the double signal actually moves apart when you approach the buffer stop, and subconsciously that generates an idea about the remaining distance. And we introduced ATB-VV to supervise the maximum speed of 15 kilometers an hour when approaching the buffer stop. This is what the buffer stop looks like. As you can see, it's quite a solid construction. The double end signals. It is designed for side buffers, but also for automatic couplings. And here you see the brake pads. Here you see some more. When this buffer stop starts sliding, it picks up these brake pads, and gradually the brake application is increased. And you can actually compare this to a plane landing on an aircraft carrier. We have problems in the infrastructure, several problems, track buckling. We had accidents with switches which were not fail safe. And the most remarkable one was not long ago. We have a whole network of electric power lines, high voltage power lines in the Netherlands. And in 2022, there was a short circuit in such a 150 kV power line. It should have switched off immediately, but it didn't. So the short circuit remained in action for several seconds, and the 150 kV power line started to glow. It expanded. It started to droop. And in the end, it touched the 1800 volt overhead of the Flevoland railway, and it burned out the railway completely. The damage was massive. We had to replace 7 kilometers of double track, of signaling wire and overhead. It was one of the most costly infrastructure accidents we ever had in the Netherlands. These are the problems that we detected. First of all, you need to have maintenance standards. But maintenance standards is one, you must also apply them and supervise them. These maintenance standards must be based on objective assessment criteria. Not do I think this track is still safe, but what do the measurements tell me? Is the head profile still within limits, for example? What we also had was that changes to major tracks in railway stations, they tested the individual points, but they didn't test the routes, the new routes. And sometimes in a double diamond point, what we call Engels wissel, the point motors were mixed up, and this resulted in a completely different route than originally intended. Surroundings of the infrastructure, we have seen examples. Zaandam, a train ending on a gas line. Voorschoten, a train derailing and ending on a fresh water line. And Flevoland, where the 150 kV power supply touched the railway overhead. Also, the condition of the infrastructure. We have at the moment a huge problem with permanent wave stability on the high-speed railway. In fact, the high-speed railway is no longer high-speed. It is now limited to 100 kilometers an hour in some places. Track buckling is still a problem. Choice of type of points. The AB switch is not fail-safe. We still use wooden sleepers, and because they can't be impregnated any longer because of environmental problems, they only last for about 10 to 15 years, and then they must be replaced. We had examples of trains which actually derailed because they went down between the rails because of the rotten sleepers. What are the lessons to be learned? Now, first of all, the George dilemma, and this is the George dilemma. There is always a continuous fight between the engineers who strive for analytical correctness, and then you get the penny pinchers, the economical managers, and they say, well, is it really necessary? And we don't have the money. You probably recognize this. And if you have survived this hurdle, then you need to go to the politicians. And again, they ask you the same question. Do we really need that? Because we have also some other political priorities. This is the George dilemma. There is a continuous fight between these three. And I can assure you, in many cases, the engineers are the ones not winning this fight. We also see organizational apathy. Many think, well, if an accident has happened, shit happens. It happened. It only happens with a risk which is calculated as once every 50 years, and many people translate a risk estimate of once every 50 years in so it will only happen over 50 years. Whereas in reality, it can happen again tomorrow. And they don't understand that. We require risk assessments for jobs, but how effective are they? You can really ask yourself that question. Is that risk assessment complete? If you have several organizations active on the same job, are the risk assessments of each of these organizations, are they in compliance with each other? Who controls the interfaces? When the risks are not clear, I advocate a defensive approach based on the precaution principle. If you have doubts about the risk, there's only one proper way of dealing with it, which is don't do it. Or if you do it, expect the worst and be prepared for that. In some ways, a railway system appears to be quite simple, linear, and clear, whereas in reality it is very complex. I can advise you to read a book written by Charles Perrault in 1984. It's called Normal Accidents. It's an eye-opener. The collision strength of rolling stock is a problem, especially when you have level crossings. What is also a problem, and that's why I am very glad to give this presentation, the international exchange of knowledge. Now, the Dutch are very fortunate because most Dutch engineers, most of Dutch railway staff, they not only speak Dutch, but they can also understand English, German, French, and even some other languages. So we have a good access to international accident investigation reports. But how about railway staff from Romania? Do you think they are able to read a Dutch report about an accident? Or you in Indonesia, what is your understanding of the Dutch language? So a lot of international exchange of knowledge is necessary, but it's not happening. The other thing is that we go for automation. Artificial intelligence is the latest development, but where is the human operator? Sometimes the human operator is your last line of defense. And last but not least, safeguarding of knowledge. I have written this book to make sure that all the experience, all the lessons that we could learn from all these accidents is not forgotten. That is more or less the end of my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation of the Netherlands railway safety, accident and incidents from Dr. Insinyur Wim Beukenkamp. I give now the floor to Pak Hermanto and Pak Prajudi first to give comments about the presentation. Please, Pak Hermanto and Pak Prajudi, your comments. Oh yeah, we have also here the Komite Nasional Keselamatan Transportasi, that is Indonesian Transportation Safety Board. The chairman is also attend this presentation. Maybe after Pak Hermanto and Pak Prajudi, the comment from the Indonesian KNKT will follow. Okay, Pak Hermanto, please your comment, and Pak Prajudi also.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pak Widayoko. First of all, on behalf of the Indonesian Railway Safety and Indonesian Society, MASKA, we are very thank you for to the speaker, especially Dr. Wim Beukenkamp.
I think your speaker went off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Mr. Wim Beukenkamp, on behalf of the Indonesian Railway Society, I would like to express our highest appreciation for your books, monumental work recording the entitled Het Sein Staat approach. I'm sorry about the phrase. I think this book is not merely a collection of accident records, but rather a profound reflection of the long journey of the railway safety in the Netherlands over more than 3 decades. So one of the key messages we can draw from this book that no railway system is entirely free from risk. I mean, every railways, both Indonesian and also Netherlands, we have risk. Yeah. Even in the countries such as Netherlands, we know that the Netherlands railways advanced and safe railway system. Accident we know from the presentations still occur. However, each of even transport into systemic learning. So we have to learn about how to prevent the accident. The approach of highly relevant to modern safety concept, where accidents are not merely viewed as individual errors, but as system failures involving interaction between human factors, technology, organization, and regulation. If we compare with Indonesian Railway, we should be grateful that Indonesian railway safety performance shown improved trend. Effort undertaken by DGR, Director General of Railways, and also the operators, the Perkeretaapian Indonesia, have resulted in various improvements, including to modernizing the signaling system. For instance, we applied the unmanned driverless, in LRT Jabodetabek, and then also improvement of railway infrastructure and rolling stock standard, and then implementation of railway safety management system for all of the operator, and then also the strengthening of regulation and supervision. but mostly we have to improve the railway human resources by certification and also the training and certification. However, we must also acknowledge that challenges remain significant, particularly is high accident risk at the level crossing, as mentioned by Mr. Wim. Also in Indonesia, there are some the level crossing is about 8,000 level crossing in Indonesia, but some of this only 2,000 of the level crossing illegal and also with barrier, but the other is not without barrier. It means that this is the important to increase the safety. So that's why that this book provides valuable lesson for us. First, safety cannot be achieved instantly. It is long-term process. We have to learn from other countries for the railways. For instance, Mr. Wim, he has many experience for the safety. We thanks for the books and experience from him. And then the transparency and openness for what incident are to improvement. And then investment of safety must be prioritized. It means that although we have to get budget for the safety, for instance, for the safety facilities, and then also signaling and something like that. Most importantly, safety culture also must be built collectively. As a discussion, I would like to get position of this book from a more academic perspective. This book is not merely a compilation of the accident, as I mentioned before, but can be categorized as the empirical safety knowledge built from accumulated accident experience. However, a critical question arises: is documenting experience sufficient to transform safety system? We know that in the modern safety literature, particularly in the safety approach, learning does not only come from failures, what went wrong, but also from success, what goes right. We also learn that every incident, no matter how small or big, has the potential to become a major accident if not properly handled. Therefore, reporting system and learning from near miss are crucial. As the chairman of MASKA, we believe that this book is highly relevant as a reference for the regulators and policy formulation, operators in improving operational system, academics and in knowledge development, practitioners in enhancing professionals in the railway sector. Regarding just a minute. Regarding the accident in the level crossing, as I mentioned before, that we still have many level crossing without a barrier. So that's why some of the accident occurred. Usually, the occurred is the biggest is because of discipline of the human error to find when crossing the guard, then crossing the level level crossing. And then also barriers not working properly, alarm not sounding, and then also vehicle stalling in the tracks, engine failure while crossing, and then also heavy vehicle getting stuck in the train. So the impact of this accident, a number of facilities up to now, damage to vehicle of the trains, and the disruption of the train operation. Sometimes must be closed. So before I close my comment, I think this book is very important as a reflection, but we must not stop at the reflection. We must move toward a safety system that is adaptive, learning, and resilient. Because unfortunately, safety is not a condition to be achieved, but a capability that must continuously be developed. May this book review even bring great benefit and serve as inspiration for all of us in improving railway safety in Indonesia. So that's all my review. Thank you very much, Mr. Wim and Pak Widodo. Thank you.
Okay, maybe Pak Prayudi will give some comments.
Yeah. Train accident in Netherlands were relatively given to the high density and frequency of the railway network, are primarily caused by a combination of human error, level crossing incident, and technical failure. The Dutch rail network is one of the busiest in the world, which increases the complexity of management. I conclude some of them. First is common causes of train accidents and incidents in the Netherlands include level crossing accident. This is major causes of serious incident, risky behavior, such as crossing when barriers are closing or ignoring warning light, frequently leads to collision and car, cyclists, or agricultural vehicle. Number two is human error. This remains a significant factor, including case of train driver. The train driver passing a red signal is mean the signal pass at the danger or SPED or misinterpreting safety procedure. Collision with obstacle or maintenance vehicle. Collision sometimes occur with object trees fallen during storm or construction maintenance vehicle. Derailment, there's often occur at lower speed with something else or due technical issues with point switch, worn infrastructure, or heat expansion of rail in summer. The common contribution factor include weather condition, high wind bringing down trees, heavy snow, block switch, or extreme heat causing rail buckling. Maintenance issue, failure in infrastructure such as switches or failure signaling can lead to serious accident. Then high traffic volume, the high density of train leaves less room for error in management. Problem and challenge, high volume traffic as a densely populated country. The sheer volume of both rail and road traffic makes managing crossing safety challenge. Aging infrastructure, increased disruption are caused by aging signal and switch, with the railway disruption trapping since 2011. Safety or night walk for solutionnya closing crossing and upgrading safety technology. The European Union standard ERTMS is being implemented, allowing for active braking curve monitoring with safer than older ATV system. Improve safety training, increase vigilance and monitoring, and strict maintenance protocol in response to accident. There is push to improve safety for workers on active track, focus on better communication and reducing the need for worker to cross in service track. Okay, thank you, Mr. Wim. There is our summarize about your book. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Prayudi. Before we heard what is the response of Pak Wim, I would like to give a chance to KNKT, the Indonesian Transportation Safety Board, Pak Suryanto Cahyono. Maybe you can give also some comments, please.
Ya, terima kasih Pak. Kuyu Medah, Menir Wim.
Pak Wim is lagi di mute.
Oh iya. Pak Wim, we have the same graduate from the same university, Pak. I also graduate from Delft University in 1999 when I took my doctoral program in Delft University. Yeah, you tell me about the old Dutch spoorwegen. Until now we still use some Dutch language on the train system in Indonesia, Pak. For example, that we still use a tim CO. When there is an accident, the train company will set up a team. We call it tim CO. Is the standpoint of tim CO is Commissie van Onderzoek. Is still in Netherlands. But also still we hear from in the field some word that still using in Dutch. For example, Vrepal is still using until now. Yeah, I know that the train system in Netherlands is very good, especially the stop train, fast train, and intercity train. Yeah, I know that it is good system. Pak Wim, I like to know about 3 items that we want you can explain about in Netherlands. First of all, about the level crossings. As I remember, then in Netherlands, when the level crossing is there is no gate, so you make some road to make the car should be go turning little bit about to the left and to the right before crossing the level crossing. Is it still exist in Netherlands, Pak? And how effective the kind of the level crossing? The second thing.
Let me answer that. It is not correct that level crossings don't have gates. Most level crossings have the American style of automatic half barriers.
Oh.
Including the bell signals. In fact, when you watch an American movie in which a level crossing occurs, you recognize the same bells as we use in the Netherlands. Again, it is supplied through the marshal aid. So most level crossings have these automatic half barriers. However, in rural areas, there are a few I think it is now less than 50, which are completely unguarded, and it is the responsibility of the driver of the road vehicle to make sure that it is safe to cross the railway. The problem is he equipped? Does he know how to judge an approaching train? Because his vehicle is only traveling at, say, 10 to 20 kilometers an hour, whereas an approaching train can travel up to 140 kilometers an hour. And 140 kilometers an hour means that one blink of an eye, the train is still hundreds of meters away, and the next blink of an eye, it is on top of the level crossing. And that's why we want to eliminate them completely.
Okay, thank you. Because during 1996 to 2000, I still found some level crossing without gate in very, very rural area.
Yeah, that's correct. And as I said, unfortunately, we still have them, but they are really the biggest hazard at the moment on the Dutch railway system. So there is an ongoing program to eliminate them as soon as possible.
Okay. In Indonesia, we still have 1,000 of them.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Second thing that I like to know about, you thought about the maintenance program. How you in Netherlands develop the maintenance program? Are you using the RAMS, reliability, availability, maintainability, and safety method
Yes.
to develop the
Yeah, we have changed from planned periodic maintenance to condition-dependent maintenance. So the track and the surroundings are regularly inspected by dedicated track inspectors, and we monitor the development of the deterioration of several items of the track, points and so on, until you come to a point that you say, well, wait a minute, it is now approaching what we call a warning condition, meaning that maintenance is not immediately required, but it be planned because, for example, at the next inspection, it must either be replaced or you will have to stop the train traffic. Then we also have the interference level, which is beyond that. The track has deteriorated so rapidly that it is no longer safe. So it must be repaired immediately. But it is, as I said, it is completely condition-dependent maintenance, no longer planned.
You mean like a condition monitoring program, something like that?
Yes.
The last thing that we have a lot of rail buckling in Indonesia, Pak Wim, and we like to know about how you ensure. One of the problem the rail buckling is the clamping force of the rail. How you know that the clamping force after you install the rail 5 or 10 years or 15 years, is the clamping force is still adequate or not? How you measure it? How you can ensure that the clamping force is adequate?
I am somewhat surprised that you have this problem in Indonesia, given that the average temperatures in Indonesia are much more remaining the same over the year. Whereas, for example, in the Netherlands, we can have very hot summers and very cold winters.
Yes.
And the track must be fit for both. The basic cause of track buckling is, first of all, how to put it, the stone where the sleepers are,
The ballast.
the ballast, which carry the sleepers. Well, they don't not just carry the sleepers; they lock them, and the ballast must be properly maintained in such a way that the ballast can prevent the sleepers from moving sideways. The second thing is that when you install new track, you must hydraulically lengthen the track to give it a pre-tension before welding them up. We now use long welded track, but you must pull the track into a longer length, pre-tension it, and then connect it and let it go. And that pre-tension must compensate the temperature difference.
Oh,
If that is not done properly, then the track buckle is inevitable.
Okay. Okay, we have also problem with the ballast problem. The sleeper not cover properly with the ballast, and one of the problem. But we have a lot of problem that losing the clamping force.
Yeah, well, one of the things is that sometimes the sleepers are not heavy enough.
Yeah. You mean the load, the sleeper load is not heavy enough to support the rail?
Well, it is heavy enough to support the rail, but it is not heavy enough to prevent the rail from moving sideways. It must be, what we found is that, especially these concrete sleepers, the sleepers that we now use on Dutch railways and in fact all over Europe, they have a wedge shape in such a way that if a sleeper starts moving sideways, it actually digs itself into the ballast. And that prevents a track buckle from developing.
Yeah. Thank you, Pak Wim. That all question. Maybe sometime we can meet together in Netherlands.
Yes, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pak.
Suryanto. Maybe Pak Wim, you have any comment about, from the Pak Hermanto and Pak Prayudi? Do you have any response for the comment from Pak Hermanto and Pak Prayudi?
Well, what I propose, I saw that there were a number of questions with. Can you collect these questions and in some cases translate them for me?
Yeah.
And then I will answer them through email, and you can forward them to the members of this meeting.
Yeah, I have already mentioned my email, so the unanswered question can be answered via emails. But I will write. I will read one of the questions. From Mr. M.S. Fadil. Question is regarding the train protection system. Question 1, which one do you think is the better train protection system between ATB next generation or ERTMS, and why? Question 2.
10 years ago, I would say ATB NG. Why? Because it's simple, it does its job. But ERTMS has one big advantage. It's a European standard. Nowadays, it is easy to get all the necessary equipment. It is beyond the development stage. It is now fully operational. And ERTMS knows 3 levels. ERTMS level 1 still uses trackside signals, but most railway lines that have been equipped in the Netherlands are now working on ERTMS level 2, and level 2 eliminates the track signals and it works on cab signaling, and that makes it a lot more simple. So my recommendation would be go for ERTMS. As I said, it's open source. There are a number of suppliers, and it works. It does its job. We never had one serious incident with trains running under ERTMS.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah, for your information, Indonesia has already implemented the ERTMS, but Chinese ERTMS operate for the high-speed train from Jakarta to Bandung. Okay, the second question is which line or segment did you choose for the first implementation of ERTMS in the Netherlands before implementing it elsewhere? And what are the factor or reason that you consider for choosing that particular line or segment?
We have actually implemented ERTMS on 2 railway lines. The first railway line was the Betuwe freight railway from Rotterdam to Germany, which was a complete new railway, and that made it a perfect testbed for ERTMS. The second one was the high-speed railway, which went or still goes from Amsterdam via Rotterdam to Belgium. When the high-speed railway was developed, we actually considered using the French TVM 430 system, which is also used on the LGV, the high-speed railways in France. But then we thought, well, hang on, ERTMS is the future. So ERTMS was also implemented on the high-speed railway, also to see whether it was really possible to have a track system supplied by one supplier and an onboard train system supplied by another. The result was that we had 2 railways. On paper, each of them was equipped with ERTMS. However, locos who were equipped with ERTMS ETCS, European Train Control System, fit for the Betuwe route, could not operate over the high-speed railway and vice versa, because there were slight differences. And actually, the Dutch government forced the European signaling industry to solve this problem, and in the end, they did. So nowadays, it really doesn't matter if Ansaldo or Siemens or Bombardier supplies the track equipment and another firm supplies the onboard equipment. It is completely transparent.
Okay, yeah, for the high-speed line, maybe we can understand, but for the Betuwe line, that is for freight. Is that important to introduce ERTMS for the freight and cargo line, because they ride slower than TGF?
Oh, no, don't underestimate the freight railway, the Betuwe route. The Betuwe route is designed for 160 kilometers an hour, and it is also designed for a capacity of 1 freight train every 5 to 10 minutes. So it's certainly not slow, and the freight trains from Rotterdam to Germany are very frequent. When you come to Cavehoek Marshalling Yard, south of Rotterdam, it is impressive. There is a freight train coming out of the port of Rotterdam each couple of minutes.
Yes. So high frequency, yeah?
Very high frequency.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, for Pak Fadil, I think your question is answered, yeah. And now question uh, from Mr. or Octodelina. The question is, other European countries and or UK are actively reducing and securing the level crossing to enhance safety and rail efficiency to the point of eliminating them. How's Netherlands effort regarding this so far? So this is a question about the level crossing.
Well,
Are you
in many countries, they have more hills and so on, so it is easier for them to create underpassings or overbridges for level crossings. Whereas in the Netherlands, we have the penalty of being as flat as a pancake, meaning that it is quite costly. As I said, it will cost you at least 10 million euros for a simple urban underpass for road traffic. And because of this very flat country, we also have comparatively many more level crossings than in other countries. And what doesn't help is that, like Java, most of the Netherlands is very densely populated, meaning that we have thousands of roads crossing the railways, with tens of thousands of people per day crossing the railways. And it is a serious problem. In fact, level crossing collisions is the biggest hazard on Dutch railways.
okay? Yeah. Second question from Otto Delina is, what are the significant challenges for railway throughout the years due to seasonal weather variation? You have winter, summer, and so forth. And how do you actively deal with it, since it is quite different from what we face here in the tropic?
Actually, seasonal influence, the only problem we have is that sometimes, but that's only once every 5 years, we have severe snow and ice. And because it's only once every 5 years, we no longer have standing equipment to deal with it. It is accepted that in such conditions, the railway is shut down for about a day to clear the snow. The biggest threat is during the summer. The climate is warming up, is heating up. Sometimes we have temperatures up to 40 degrees, which is high, especially if you realize where the Netherlands is located. It's quite up north. These are almost Indonesian temperatures, and track buckling is a serious threat under these conditions. To safeguard it, when there is a heat wave, the inspection frequency of the track is increased, and they know exactly where the critical points are, the sensitive points to track buckling, and even nowadays we use drones to inspect the track.
Okay, yeah, it is quite strange that sometimes in the Netherlands, the temperature until 40 degrees, yeah, is
Yes.
quite hot.
Yeah.
Okay, and yeah, I see the time is almost finished. So I would like to make the train arrive on time. So for the audience, there are still many questions unanswered. So I would like to inform the audience that your questions can be sent to my email wwidoyoko@gmail.com. Jadi untuk bapak-bapak, ibu-ibu bisa kirim emailnya ke email saya. Sudah saya umumkan di chat. Silahkan dikirim, nanti kita jawab ke masing-masing peserta yang bertanya. Terus material presentasi nanti akan dikirim juga ke email dari peserta yang terdaftar. So Pak Wim, the material presentation, your PowerPoint will be sent to every audience who has already send email to the organizer. Okay, your presentation is very meaningful and useful for the audience, and yeah, we are very enthusiastic to follow your presentation, and maybe some people here will also buy your book. It is still in the Dutch language, but via Google Translate, maybe we can translate the Dutch, maybe some specific term, railway term, cannot be translated good by the Google. Maybe if there are many questions about the translation from your book, we can also contact with you again. Yeah. So this is not the first time, but we still continue via MASKA. You can also ask your question to MASKA or Pak Wim, and we're still in contact. Once again, I would like to thank you, Pak Wim, and all audience. And yeah, we see you later.
See you later. Thank you very much.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you very much. Makasih
Thank you
Pak
very much.
Ketemu lagi.
Pak Wir.